Hello, welcome back to Piers Rocks. Today I'm going to be taking a look at my Amiga 500. I've been having some problems with this, so I'm going to take a look inside and also upgrade it to 1 megabyte of chip RAM. The problems I've been hitting with this Amiga are, in some games, Shadow of the Beast 2, I've been hitting some amounts of graphical corruption. And in fact, in Shadow of the Beast 2, I also hit some guru meditation errors during the intro animation. As soon as I opened up this Amiga, it became immediately apparent that there was some kind of problem in here. Have you spotted it yet? I'll give you just a few more seconds to see if you can figure out what's wrong in here. Well, the problem is on the 0.5 megabyte memory expansion board here. In fact, I've already removed and discarded the battery that was installed here. Looks like it's leaked all over the board and caused corrosion, particularly in this area of the board. I can also see a whole bunch of the pins on the expansion board side of the connector are corroded, and there's even some corrosion on some of the pins leading to the main motherboard here. I don't think the corrosion has gone any further into the main motherboard, so it looks like I've caught it in time. Now, what I intend to do to fix this problem is I'm not going to bother repairing this expansion board. Because I've got the revision 6A of the Amiga 500 motherboard, this actually supports up to 1 megabyte of chip RAM, faster than the slow RAM that's by default provided by the memory expansion. I can have 1 megabyte of chip RAM directly on the motherboard by taking the chips off the expansion and installing them on the motherboard here. I also need to add some capacitors associated with each of the RAM chips and change this jumper setting here. So there's a trace between the bottom two pads I need to cut, and I need to solder the top two pads together. Now, I can't actually prove or disprove whether the problems with this memory expansion board caused my issues, because I've already reseated and reconnected this board and the problems have gone away. But I suspect what happened was there was some corrosion on the connectors here that I've cleaned off just through virtue of removing and reseating the board. Anyway, I'm going to install these RAM chips over into the main motherboard now. I thought before removing the memory chips, I'd give you a closer look at this RAM expansion board. This is where the battery was located on the board, and you can see the traces nearby are there's huge amounts of corrosion here, the edge of this resistor, this diode are all looking quite corroded. Now, I don't know until I edit the video whether you can also see the corrosion on the pins leading to the connection. Those three in particular, and then there's some more corrosion down here. But these memory expansion boards are very available fairly cheaply online, and I already have the plan in mind to move these chips onto the main motherboard, so I don't feel any particular desire to try and recover this circuit board. I have the RAM chips off the expansion board. I've also taken the real-time clock chip off. This was already socketed in case I want to reuse this in future. I wasn't particularly careful when I did the desoldering, so I lifted a couple of traces on the expansion board. That's fine. I'm just going to chuck this in the bin. And slightly more problematically though, one of the RAM chips is missing most of one of its legs. Now, I don't know if I actually did this while desoldering in being too rough, or whether it was actually missing half the leg previously. I did note that when I was desoldering, one of them, a bunch of the legs were actually folded underneath, presumably to hold the chip in place while it was soldered in the first place. And I did think that one looked like it was actually missing, so I suspect this was missing already. Now, in terms of putting these into the A500 motherboard, I was going to socket them. I probably will still socket these three. I might solder this one directly onto the motherboard so I can get a good connection with that missing leg. We'll see. The other thing I wanted to say about these RAM chips is that they are 256K 4-bit RAM chips. They're 514 256 RAM chips, so you need two pairs in order to add 512 kilobytes to the Amiga, bringing us up to the 1 meg total chip RAM with the 512K that's already on the motherboard. Let's take a quick look at the upgraded board on the bench. So these are the 4 added RAM chips with their capacitors. This is the missing pin on the RAM chip. I have stuck a leg of one of these capacitors actually into the socket and then soldered it to the chip body, and then I also cut the jumper here and soldered these 2 pads together. So pretty straightforward mod. Let's see if it boots. It's powered on, it's loading from disk, that's a good start. Test kit successfully loaded. Let's check the memory. And we have 1 megabyte chip RAM, so that was a successful upgrade. You can see there's no fast RAM, no slow RAM, it's all 1 meg of chip RAM. I'll do some memory tests now. So memory tests seem to be working fine. That's great. Now let's try loading Shadow of the Beast 2. As a reminder, Shadow of the Beast 2 was the game, one of the games I was hitting problems with originally before I reseated the expansion card and the problems went away. So it's not conclusive that I fixed the problem, but I want to check that it still runs the initial animation successfully. So it loads, that's great. So as a little way through the animation I started getting corrupted graphics. So it was around about this point of the animation that I was getting corrupted graphics. Oh, I'm still getting corruption. So that has not resolved the problem. So despite having a successful 1 meg chip upgrade, I still seem to have some problems with this machine. So that was really interesting to me, that I saw some corruption there during the animation. It was a different type of corruption. I was seeing full screen corruption or full graphical image corruption previously, and that was just a little bit of corruption on the screen. However, it looks fairly similar in terms of the problem, so this machine is going to need some more diagnosis and fixing. That was a quick look at an Amiga A500 with me upgrading the RAM on the motherboard to 1 megabyte of chip RAM. Obviously I've still got some problems with this Amiga. It's showing some graphical corruption in Shadow of the Beast 2. My plan from here is I'll put it back together. I'll let the kids playtest it some, see if they can get a more reproducible scenario where it demonstrates the fault, and I can then move forward with the diagnosis and the fix from there. I don't know a great deal about the internals and workings of an Amiga, so this is a great learning opportunity for me. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider subscribing to the channel. Maybe next time we'll be back on the familiar theme of floppy disks, who knows? Until then, rock on!